Welcome, everybody, to Crime, Corrections, and Culture, where we give you the whole truth and nothing but the truth about the prison system, about criminals, about rehabilitation. I'm going to turn it over to Persephone. She probably has some housekeeping stuff to tell you, and then we can begin.
Please don't forget to follow us on Twitch and to find all three shows on Spotify. We're a couple of episodes delayed on Spotify at the moment because of reasons. But please go and find all of the shows on Spotify and leave a rating, listen to them, share them with your friends, follow on Twitch, buy some merch. We have great merch available. And today, we're discussing Inside the Criminal Mind, which I need to open on my phone. Michael, how did your debate go? While I find this.
It was a tough one. He was good. You know, uh, there were parts I thought I did well, parts I think that the problem is I set the time constraints, and those time constraints didn't suit me well.
The time constraints constrained you.
Yeah. But I don't think like I got, destroyed or anything like that, but I could have done better. But it was a good debate. I mean, I'm debating a philosophy professor on ethics. But ultimately, I thought I did well. So that'll be available on The Rational Egoist either tonight or tomorrow. But right now on The Rational Egoist, we have a great episode. We, 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 we have a great episode of The Rational Egoist out right now concerning honesty with Jim Valiant.
Which should be great.
Yes.
Okay, so we have moved on from discussing. Oh, I'm so distracted. We've moved on from discussing Down the Rabbit Hole, and now we're reading Inside the Criminal Mind by Dr. Stanton Samenow.
Yes.
Which just so you know, I got like a quarter of the way through. Which is better than the chap. Are you in a different tab?
I am. Just go with it. I got to fix something here.
Okay. Well, you're frozen. I just want you to know that. And at least you're frozen on a good face. Okay. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm just going to go through and like read out some of the things that I've highlighted, and there's some places that I have questions, right? So in the preface, he says, for decades, the prevailing conventional wisdom about criminality has regarded the offender as a victim of forces over which he has little or no control. Virtually everything imaginable has been identified as a cause of criminal behavior, including parenting, bad parenting, poverty, peer pressure, violence in the media, and various types of mental illness. Then later in the book, he gives this amazing list of headlines, right, where these are the things that they blame crime on. Violent video games, violent media, inflammation in the body, sleep disorders, soda, loneliness, candy, cholesterol, lead in the gasoline, climate change, comic books, and phases of the moon.
Sounds about right.
That was really worrying to me because...
What edition do you have of the book? I didn't realize you had a hard copy. I thought you had it.
No, I don't have a hard copy. I have.
Oh, those are your notes. Okay, never mind. Never mind.
I have notes that I made, but the copy that I have is, I will tell you now. I have revised and updated edition 2014.
Oh, okay. That's not the last. I'm not in that one. I'm in the latest revised one.
I'll go and buy the latest
one.
No,
you don't. No. But go ahead. Ask the question.
No, that's not the thing that I had a question about. Like I said, I'm just going to go through a couple of places. This is another book where I highly recommend everybody read this because it's a great book. Kind of bleak, but very good. So he goes on to say that none of the widely accepted causes of crime that have been mentioned have withstood scrutiny, and then one guy said to Dr. Jokelson, if I didn't have enough excuses for crime before psychiatry, I now have more than enough after all of these years.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that way, like when you first like got to prison and you started going through programs? Did you feel that way? Like, well, this is just giving me more excuses.
No, because by the time I really started to dive into programs in prison, I was already armed against that stuff. You know what I mean? So I'd already read a number of books on personal responsibility, so I wasn't buying that. But growing up, yeah, I thought nothing was my fault, and I always thought that I was the victim. I don't know if it was from psychiatry or from, that's just a general cultural ethos or just my own, criminal thinking. But I always thought that my bad behavior was justified because of what I'd been through in life.
Yeah. So here's another thing that I made a note of. So they're talking about what causes criminal behavior and like criminal personalities. And he says that he was received personal attacks from a lot of his audience. But then he says the latter group, correctional officers, counselors, law enforcement officials, and psychologists, embraced our work because it was in line with what they encountered every day and because it provided insights that help them to do their work more effectively. So now we've just finished reading Down the Rabbit Hole, where
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty clear from what you experienced that there are a lot of people in correctional whatever who didn't take this work into
Well,
account. So,
yeah. I don't. The problem is, I don't know how many people actually read his work or studied his work that he's talking about. But there's also, it's possible for people to work in corrections and recognize this phenomenon with the criminal population, but have no self awareness to understand their role in perpetuating the problem.
I mean, could you tell if someone had did know this kind of thing? Could you tell?
What do you mean? You froze on me, Persephone. I don't know what happened. I hope it's not me, but you froze. And that sucks because I don't know what your question was. I don't know what you're asking me. Could I tell if it's can I tell that the inmates have these characteristics? Yes, I can. If it's can you tell if the correction staff has knowledge of it? No, I couldn't. But I wouldn't know who who knew or who didn't know from these things. I wish that Persephone was not frozen. Let me see if I can't remove her and add her back, and hopefully that does it. What'd you do?
Can, can you hear me now?
I can't. I just got a text from a friend who said he loves your voice, by the way.
I feel like you people need your hearing checked because it's the worst accent ever.
Okay. So I hope I answered your question. If not, then you can
Yeah, my
clarify.
question was about the staff. Like, could you tell if there were staff members who like knew these things?
No, by and large, the staff that I'm dealing with, no, they didn't seem to show any insight into anything. And it's possible that the doctors were duped. They're talking to correctional staff. They may not understand that, what they are. And the correctional staff are saying, oh, yeah, this is on point. This is right. But they really don't have any insight into it.
But I mean that sort of tracks with the general feeling that you get about the correction staff from Down the Rabbit Hole, which is that everything was kind of a performance. That in how they ran things normally, they did whatever the fuck they wanted. Um, but then when they were, sort of observed, they pretended to be better. Oh, I need to mute my notifications. Um, so another thing that I found interesting was he's talking about the causes of crime, and they say that they link it to poverty, right?
Whoa, look at this.
Thank
I
you,
forgot to
Nicole.
mention the super stickers and super chats. Nicole, thank you so much for the $20 super sticker. Very, very much appreciated.
Yes, thank you. Um, Megan Ribbons wants to know how my Texan accent is.
It's wonderful.
I don't. What does a Texan accent sound like? I don't have a Texan. I don't know how that sounds.
Talk American.
I don't wanna.
All right, then let's get to the questions.
Okay, so one of the things that he brings up later, which I will come back to, is that the link between poverty and crime.
Yeah.
Where I'll get to the quote eventually, but in the beginning, this is still in the preface. He says you'll also see the similarity in thinking patterns between white collar criminals who commit multi-million-dollar crimes and street thugs who threaten an elderly person at knife point. And that's really kind of interesting, that the thinking errors or what causes like criminal behavior isn't the same. I mean, is the same. And the socioeconomic factors that people think cause crime, poverty, it doesn't explain the people who have loads of money and like multi-million-dollar businesses and who also commit crime.
Right.
So I'm sorry, eventually I will get to my questions.
Okay.
I'm highlighting interesting things. Okay, here. Maudlin sentiment and savage brutality reside side by side within the same individual.
Yes.
The one said, I can change from tears to ice and back again.
Yep.
Was it like that? Was it like that for you?
Yes. You want me to elaborate?
I do want you to elaborate.
I could cry my eyes out over a girlfriend, or be very sad about a movie. I could feel very bad about myself. I could feel sorry for myself. I could comfort a friend who was suffering. I always loved animals my entire life. I would hold the door for old people. And at the same time, I could put a gun in your face and demand that you give me your money immediately. And if you didn't, or maybe just for fun, I would assault the person. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to ask you that. So while I was reading this, there were two big questions, because the main thing that he talks about in this first chapter is that the criminal simmers with anger because people do not satisfy his expectations. They fail to confirm his perception of himself as powerful, unique, and superior.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's talking about something else, and he says that the criminal exercises power, nurtures his ego, and confirms his perception that he is irresistible.
Mm-hmm.
Is this how you felt about yourself? That you were
Did I feel
strong
that
and powerful and unique and superior and
unique?
irresistible?
Unique, yes. Irresistible, no. But definitely unique. Definitely smarter than others. And definitely enraged when people stood in the way of what I wanted or denied me what I wanted.
So, the two questions that I had written down after I read this chapter, it's the two main ones, is he talks about how the criminal thinks that he's a good person,
Yes.
which we spoke about in Down the Rabbit Hole.
Yeah.
Did you think that you were a good person
Yes.
because you held
So-
doors open?
No, what I did was I did what a lot of people do, especially a lot of criminals, is I thought that there was this core me that was separate from the things that I did. So I felt like I was a good person, but the world was so rotten to me that it made me act badly. But that didn't change the inherent good that I was.
Hectic.
Hectic.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to say that the way that I'm acting isn't the real me, because that seems like a wild contradiction to hold.
Well, how many times have you heard somebody say, judge the actions, not the person?
All the time.
Right. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but it is a relatively common thing. I mean, but the disconnect with the I should have went there to the private chats. I would have known what you were talking about. The disconnect with criminals, it's just so vast. You're not talking about somebody who might be snapping at their kids occasionally. You're talking about somebody who's doing horrible, horrible things and still maintaining a view of himself or herself as a good person.
Yeah. So Jeanette says maybe not to those extremes, but don't you think everyone has a
Well,
dark side?
yeah,
Wait. I want to read a quote before you launch into your spiel.
my spiel.
Your spiel. Okay.
All right.
So in the prologue to this book, Dr. Samenow says there's always the danger of developing a case of medical student's disease in which you start thinking, my husband does some of these things, my son does them as well, and I think some of this applies to me. You may begin seeing criminality everywhere. Bear in mind there is a continuum with respect to most aspects of personality. It's normal for a person to experience some anxiety while anticipating the results of a medical test. At the other extreme, a person might be paralyzed by anxiety to the point where he's housebound or phobic to go outside.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, that's kind of what I just said. Is the extremes with criminals are so vast. I mean, you have criminals that kill people and still think they're a good person, still think they're a victim. It's not just a matter of, well, you have a dark side, like she says. These are people capable of, extreme brutality,
Heinous.
thefts, robberies, heinous acts, and still maintain that they're good people.
Yeah. So the example that he gives specifically is lying, right? He says nearly all of us tell small lies. A 2-year-old knocks over a glass of milk and points to the cat. Your friend asks if you like her new hairstyle, and to avoid hurting her feelings, you lie. There's a significant difference between a person who tells a relatively innocuous lie to avoid embarrassment and the individual who lies as a way of life. He lies to, then he's talking about criminals, he lies to preserve a view of himself as special and powerful, and every time he succeeds at deceiving others, he fortifies that image of himself. Were you like a big liar?
Yeah. Context dependent. I didn't just lie for the sake of lying, but I had no problem lying. Like some people, I have a friend, for instance, a kid I grew up with. A couple of them, actually, even the one who just texted me. The guy who just texted me lies all the time for no reason. And he's not like a criminal. He just lies constantly. Like when we were kids, he would call me up and tell me about baseball trades that never occurred and, just weird things. And I have another friend who would lie all the time. That's not me. But I would lie. I wouldn't hesitate if I'm cheating on my girlfriend and she says, "Where were you?" I would told her, I'd lie till the end. Caught red-handed. No, your eyes are deceiving you. I just got a text from that friend. He told me I'm a dick. Anyway, like I remember my girlfriend, when I was a teenager, like girls would call the house. And I had a system where I would tell girls, if you call and my girlfriend answers, hang up. Right? So one day I was asleep. I was laying down on my bed and the phone rings and I'm half awake, half not. And then I just felt this awful crash across my shin. She hit me with the phone, across the shin. And one of the girls violated the contract and called and said, this is what happens. He tells us to hang up when we call. And it's obvious because this is happening where people are calling and I'm still lying. No. That girl's crazy. I would never do that. I told her one day I'm going to help my friend up the street move. And meanwhile, I've got a girl picking me up over the hill and I'm running from her, so she can't track me. And I just keep going. Or, I would lie to teachers, to cops, whatever, with, to the point where I'm convincing myself. I had an assault case And somebody told me you should tell the cops that you were stabbed first. Tell them that tell them the guy had a knife. Now at that point in time, I had a scratch across my side from my dog. So I said that the kid cut me, and that's why I assaulted him. It got to the point where I'm like, are they kidding me? I was assaulted, and they're not, they're not taking that into consideration. It was a complete fabrication. But I started to partly believe it. I knew, the difference between fact and fiction, but my emotions were still following as if I was being screwed here.
That's a bit insane.
A bit?
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, I understand that. There are like non-criminals who lie so much that they start to believe their own bullshit. So the two main questions that I had were, did you think you were a good person? And then this. An offender commented in all seriousness to his probation officer, this empathy thing, what's in it for me? Which is insane to me because I'm a very empathetic person. Were you? Did you lack empathy, or were
Oh,
you? Because
God.
now seem like a fairly empathetic person.
Yes. So at times, again, it's fleeting. I remember watching in my neighborhood a kid getting beat up, and I felt a few times I felt so bad for him. Or, when I would do something, I would feel so guilty, or see an animal suffering and just feel terrible. I think I told this story on the show. I'll tell it again. There's a thinking error called cutoff, where criminals can cut off their emotions, cut off their empathy, cut off their fear, cut off their guilt. And when I was 14, or was I? No, I was 14. I agree with Robert, by the way, but context matters here. So I committed a robbery, an assault, and I felt horrible about it. And I went home and felt guilty, and I just pushed it out of my head. I felt terrible, empathy for the person, but I couldn't stand that feeling. The logical thing to do in that situation is, okay, I don't ever want to commit that kind of crime again. But in my head, the logical thing to do was to push that guilt out of my head.
Guilty.
Right. So then, and the thing is, the more you do that, the easier it becomes. And I could do things with, he's texting me telling me I'm empathetic, or I was. Yeah, at times. But I could also be very, very violent and not feel a shred of guilt, because of the cutoff mechanism, because of fragmentation from moment to moment. So to answer your question, I know what it means to be able to act without empathy, but I was capable of empathy.
Okay. Which is wild to me, and that's why one of the things that you had to do was develop like a very strong sense of guilt,
Yes.
which is something that we've spoken about before. Um, so then he says psychology and sociology have long advanced the view that the criminal is basically like everyone else, but becomes destructive because he's been traumatized or stymied in fulfilling his aspirations. So the criminal is a victim of his circumstances, or of bad parenting, or of poverty, or of affluenza, which was another great one. I liked this. I like that in the same chapter they say people have said that crime is caused by poverty, but crime is also caused by being too rich. Because if you're too rich, your parents don't pay attention to you, and you face no consequences. So crime, too poor, too rich, there's like a Goldilocks moment where you can have just the right amount of money to not be a criminal. So anyway, so they criminal, being a criminal, you're a victim of your circumstances. You felt that way when you were
Yeah.
younger.
Mm-hmm.
When did that stop working for you? At what point did you go, I can't blame my upbringing, my parents, my environment?
Probably when I was 22.
What happened when you were 22?
I did a lot of reading. and I learned about personal responsibility. I
What
learned
did you read
about,
first?
oh Christ, I don't know what I read first. I have the list somewhere. A matter of fact,
We should post that. We should just post the entire list.
I've posted it before. I'll find it and I'll send it. I'll take pictures and send it all to you. The problem is it's in a what's it called? Composition book. So it's not like it's in one long list. It's on pages and pages and pages. So I got
I
a
mean,
picture.
just send me a whole bunch of photos, and
I
then I'll
will.
type
That
up.
means I got to take them. So she says, Jeanette says, tell the Menendez brothers that. I don't know what she wants to tell them, but she's. I think she's assuming that, but for their parents' behavior, they would not have been criminals. We, of course, cannot know that. I do know this. To a person, I've met people in prison who you would have thought their crime was a one-off. And when you talk to them and see how they behave, you quickly learn, no, it was not.
So, I mean, so we're going to talk about this now. Um, one of the first chapters is that parents don't create criminals. I think that actually might be what the chapter is called.
Yeah, as my friend is texting me how my parents created me as a criminal.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to tell you what this chapter is called. So the first chapter is the failure to identify the causes of crime. Then the next chapter is parents don't turn children into criminals, the child rejects the parents. So in this chapter, he talks about literally that, how the circumstances that a child grows up in don't necessitate that he's going to become a criminal. They don't.
No, I got to say, Persephone, is that this is one area where I disagree with them in part because they seem to talk about the issue as if the parents just have no role at all. And, these kids are just bad and act out against the parents. But that's not always the case. It can be, and it is true. There's a word for it, and I can't remember off the top of my head, where parents are responding to difficult children. And it's not just in the criminal literature. It can be, just a difficult kid. It gets on the parents' nerves, whatever. You know what I mean? I don't think that parenting is irrelevant. What I do think is that ultimately people are causal agents. We're autonomous. And regardless of your upbringing, you can choose differently. I know kids that had rough upbringings. I know kids who were, I know brothers, one who turns out good, one who turns out bad. Ultimately, it's on the individual. There, I think they're right, but I think that they downplay the role of environment just a little bit too much.
It's super. That chapter was super weird for me, right? So that's chapter 2. And it's super odd because they talk about how the environment doesn't necessarily affect the child. They talk about how one sibling can be well behaved, and he gives quite a few examples
Well,
of
that's
real.
true. It's true. But here's the logic breaks down for me because if you're saying that the kids can just be bad, but then why couldn't the parents?
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
what I'm saying. The chapter was a bit weird for me because it felt a bit like, I don't, cherry picking is a harsh word, but it did feel like pointing to certain stories that fit what they wanted to say.
sure. So here's what I think the overall point is, right? It's that trying to find a cause for crime is a fool's game. And it's ultimately, you have the criminal. Okay, now what can you do with him? Their work is more descriptive, not explanatory. It doesn't explain how criminals come to be. It explains what criminals are and what to do about it. The idea that environment causes crime or genetics causes crime, there's too many counterexamples, right, that go against it. it doesn't mean environment's irrelevant. It doesn't mean that, you can just subject somebody to any type of mistreatment you want and that person's still going to turn out okay. What it means is that people are capable of acting within most environments to become responsible adults. Criminals don't, even though other people who share their environment often do.
Yeah. So the whole thing, he actually says this. He says the search for causes of crime is unending and somewhat comparable to scientists' effort to understand the causes of cancer. We think that if we discover the cause of what baffles and terrifies us, whatever the scourge is, it can be eliminated. Unlike with cancer, there should be no expectation that even if we succeed in identifying the root causes of criminality, that we will discover a cure. And he talks about the scratch on the table approach. You don't have to know why the table is scratched, rather be concerned about how it was damaged. Rather than be concerned about how it was damaged, you need to examine the table to determine what it is made of and assess its condition in order to determine whether it's restorable.
Mm-hmm.
How does a criminal make decisions? What are his expectations of himself and of other people? How is it that he can pray in church at 10 o'clock, but 2 hours later terrorize a homeowner during a break and entry?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then to ask why delinquency occurs is like asking why human nature is what it is.
I personally think that it's not. I think that we should always be seeking more knowledge, right, about whatever the case, the condition, the behavior is. But broadly speaking, I think that they're correct that up till now the search for causes has been a fool's game. But we can't identify what criminals are and what works with them. The problem for me with the causal explanations is people talk and act as if they know far more than what they actually do. And in the theories that they come up with actually do more harm than good.
So speaking of more harm than good, he talks about anger management classes. You did anger management classes
Yes.
in prison.
I've done a ton of them.
So he actually says that anger management classes are not just like they're not just they're doomed to fail, but that they're also what is the word that he uses?
Counterproductive. You don't want to teach you don't want to teach criminals to manage anger. You want to teach them to eliminate it.
Oh, it's legitimizing their anger is what he says. That
Yes. So in anger management classes, they will tell you there's nothing. Anger is productive. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's how you express it. I think there's validity to that point of view more so than what the doctors would give it. I also think there's the danger that they recognize is there, that you can normalize the anger. And I think that the goal should be to eliminate it, the type of anger that the criminals have, but to recognize that the chances that you're going to stop a person from ever getting angry are slim to none. So you do have to teach people how to respond when they become angry.
which is it's different. It's different for I'm gonna say a regular person versus a criminal, right? Because
regular folk, yeah.
regular, yeah, with us, with regular folk, because for a lot of people, anger is fairly not useful, but it's not something to be like, I can never feel angry. For most people, that's probably the more unhealthy way to be, is to like tamp down all your anger.
Well, they're not just talking about suppression, though. I mean, they're ultimately talking about the way that you think and how altering your thinking so that you don't become angry. And they have a saying, and it's kind of true. I mean, it really is true that anger is never necessary to solve a problem. And I think that they're right about that. I just saw an animal run behind you.
Yeah, it's because my husband's opening the back door so he can take them outside, and then they all go running. Anger is not needed to solve a problem. I think anger's, for me at least, like, I think anger can be useful sometimes. I could be wildly wrong. I
It can
haven't
be
put
it can
much.
be a motivator. There's no doubt about that. But is it necessary to solve a problem? Is the question. And the problem. Another thing is you get angry. Maybe you, I don't know, throw a spoon at the. These guys get angry and people get maimed. So
But that's why I'm saying it's different because the whole point of this is that the book starts with like the first chapter is talking about how criminality, like criminal thinking, begins like in childhood.
yes, it does, no doubt.
So I mean, if you don't if you don't have these criminal thinking errors, then um it's different. It's different. Um, so I mean, we covered basically the prologue and one of the first chapters, and we can continue on
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yes.
Wednesday and then Thursday. But we will be on the Capitalist Corner on this channel tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we will be returning to Everyday Ethics tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please remember right now that my Rational Egoist podcast, great show with Jim Valiant about the virtue of honesty, and coming shortly, my debate with Professor Michael Humer on the objectivist ethics. Persephone, what else do you have to tell them before we go?
Please don't forget to follow us on Twitch and find Crime, Corrections and Culture, Everyday Ethics, and the Capitalist Corner on Spotify. And please don't forget to go and buy merch. Please visit
Mitch.
merch, thecapitalistcorner.org. Is that really the website? Yeah, capitalistcorner.org. And click the shop button and look at some of the fun, amazing merch we have. We have great merch. We have Fuck Bullies. We have Live, Laugh, Liebowitz. That's a fun one.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the cash. We will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Take care.
Bye.